Let's talk about the house mold. Now, the house mold is coming up quite often these days for like health issues, and I'm going to share with you what I found out about where to look for those house molds and how to maybe fix it. So, when you see like YouTube videos with health gurus, they talk a lot about house mold exposure when they're kids and you have chronic illnesses. Some of the symptoms that I found out from research, several hours on YouTube at least, and reading up on things, is that first thing is you cough a lot. If you have asthma in you or family members, or seasonal allergies often in the house, like irritated eyes, joint pains, skin irritation, forgetfulness, foggy mind, and chronic tiredness. And if more than one the family members have these kind of issues, it could be the house mold issue in the house. So where do you check for, and how do you check for the mold in the house? The first thing is obviously the smell. I used to go to this, when I was a kid, going to this cartoon shop which was in the basement, and when you walk in there, it feels like super cool and very musty smell. I kind of like the smell, but that was probably mold in there because it was really moist and it's like there's no window. So smell and the stains and color changes on the wall. When you see like a wall color changing, that's a good indicator. A lot of the places that I see are under the window framing, and if there's like a window, the flashing is not well done, the water comes in, the rain comes in through the window frames and then comes down here on the side, and then you're going to see some color changing here. That means there's wetness behind this sheetrock, and there's a high chance that there could be mold. Whether that mold is going to come through the walls or not, I'm not sure, but if it shows a color change here, there's a good chance that you're going to have some kind of particles, the mold particles, flying around in this room. And the other areas that I see often is like the plumbing leakage. It could be just one drip water of the plumbing, but then that make a pool of water, and then the water doesn't dry up. That means it's gonna go bad and becomes mold. Now, one way to check is one of those infrared cameras that can read different temperatures behind the walls. They're like $200-300, so it's not really a cheap one to buy. But when you do the home inspection, the home inspectors who I hire, they have that, so they give you this different temperature, like a reading of every wall and every plumbing. So for example, you can kind of see if they're running like a hot water from the second floor bathroom, the plumbing will have like a red color or a different color compared to the wall. If it's a missing insulation of the corner of the room, it's going to show that color. And what they use is the moisture meter. They use this moisture meter and kind of poke through the wall, and they can see, I believe, like maybe an inch and a half, like behind the wall, the moisture content. That's how they check like siding issues or the moisture issues behind the wall. And those things you could probably do. If you want to do that, you have to buy those tools like $200-300. But the other way to check is the swab test. So they sell these kits. You can place those swabs and send those into the lab. The other one is the air quality test. Now, based on my research, the air tests, they're not that accurate because they can only read like 3 or 4 feet from the source. So if you have mold issues in the bathroom and you have the reading machine in the bedroom, it's not gonna show anything. So before you spend any money, you might wanna check with just basic stuff, like smell, the stain, the color change, and possibly like a thermal guns or one of those infrared cameras or the moisture meters. Now, where do you look for mold? So these are some of the areas that you're going to find the most. The first one is inside of the cabinet doors, especially in the bathroom or the basement kitchenette. If you open that up, if you pull out the drawer, underneath that drawer could be really easy to build mold there. So that's the first place. The other one is behind like the couches or the bookcases between the walls. Houses with mold issues, you're going to find some mold behind your, the back of the couches, which is pretty obvious one. You can check the edges of the rooms, especially the basement, the carpet edges. You can check that, and then you can kind of smell there too. Behind the sliding door, and this one, the pocket doors. Pocket doors are not used that often between like a formal dining room and kitchen, right? You pull that out. When you pull that out, if you go all the way to the edge, you might see some mold there. And HVAC vents. HVAC vents, that's kind of hard place to check, but some vents will show like a 2 feet of the vent. And if you see anything like a dust looking or like a dark gray dust looking, you might want to suspect that that's the mold. It could be the vent needs to be cleaned too because it collects a lot of dust, but you need to check that. The plumbing dripping, as I mentioned, the bathroom. So bathroom, if it has like a little drops of the leakage, it's going to become an issue. And again, the infrared or the moisture meter guns can tell that. Two obvious places are the crawl space underneath the subfloor or the attic space. In Oregon, most of the homes have this crawl space and attic space, unless you have like a split level with a concrete foundation and like a vaulted ceiling. There's no attic space, but about 90% of the homes do have the crawl space. So when you go into the crawl space, if there's like a standing water there, you're going to most likely see some kind of mold growing on the frames or the underneath the subfloor. So you need to check that. Crawl space is a whole other thing that I talk a lot about because the water gets in there, constantly, and that's one of the main reasons why we have moisture and bad air quality issues in the house. Let's see, behind the walls, I talked about that. The last place that I would check if I were you is a check under the toilet tank cap. When you, it's like a ceramic type of cap, right? That toilet tank where the water is. And most of the homes with the mold issues will have some mold underneath that cap or behind the wall of the toilet tank. Now, toilet tank, when it gets like cold water there and when the room is warm, it makes a condensation, right? And if it doesn't dry up fast enough, that will become the mold. So how do you get rid of the mold? Obviously, you need to get rid of the sources, whether that is the house not ventilating that well. So I see a lot of times when we do home inspections, the bathroom exhaust pipes, they're supposed to connect to the roof cap so they can ventilate out. If the exhaust pipe is off that cap, it's going to just spill out all the moisture into the attic space. And we see that a lot. And the attic space gets the black mold all under that roof, the boards. That's first one. So obviously, if that's the case, you need to just reconnect that and use the bathroom vents whenever you take shower or bath. That's the obvious one. And then the other thing is make sure that all the outside of the house is well protected, like roof and siding and crawl space, so no water gets in. The most places that I see the rain getting in is, as I mentioned, the window frames, obviously the roof leakage, the crawl space vent with overflowing gutter water just going under that crawl space through the vent. And then the other thing might be the plumbing leakage in the house. So how do you fix it? So first of all, you need to ventilate. You need to ventilate at least a couple of times a week, in my opinion, in Oregon. When there's good weather, just open up all the windows. That's a great way to do it. And use your bathroom and kitchen ventilation, the hoods and everything. And based on my research, other than sort of dangerous, toxic chemicals, you could use vinegar, mixture vinegar with like bug spray, and you can actually spray. Apparently that kills most of it without like making toxic in the house, toxicity, I should say. And in a worst case, if the basement doesn't have the good the ventilation, you might want to use dehumidifier. I remember using this in Minnesota because Minnesota we had a lot of high moisture issue in the basement. So dehumidifier, just let it run and it collects the moisture, making it to water. You need to dump that out. So let's see. And the other one that they recommend on the internet is the hydrogen peroxide. Again, using the proper amount. One of the experts mentioned about 8% solution of the hydrogen peroxide. And again, you might want to wear some mask if you're going to spray that. And there's other way to do like the bleach, mold bleach. But based on my research, even they get killed, it could still make issues. So check those out. And you might want to, let's see, getting rid of the sources. So yeah, as I mentioned that. So attic space. So from the attic space, the room, the crawl space, inside of the cabinets, behind the walls. So find those sources. Look to see if you have the mold or not. If you have similar issues, if you feel better outside than inside, there might be some issues in the house. So hopefully this gave you some good idea of how to find mold, whether you have the mold or not, and where to look for mold, and how to get rid of source and maybe fix some of these issues using some of these things like the vinegar or the hydrogen peroxide, other than the toxic chemical. So I hope that was helpful. If you like this video, please hit the like button and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Have a great day and thanks for your support.